This is State Representative Rita Mendez, and I am here today with another show, Brockton to Beacon Hill, with a very special guest, especially because he lives in my district, and it's so nice to have Brockton people joining at the show, especially someone so special as David Price. And tell us, the audience, a little bit about you and what you do, and what we're going to be discussing about today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Representative Mendez. It's great to be here. And I love living in Brockton. I own a home on Oak Street. But to tell you a little bit more about my background, I work at Boston College Law School in a program. It's called the Initiative on Land, Housing, and Property Rights. And what that means is working with communities like Brockton, with communities who have been denied the right to own a home historically or have been targeted for predatory loans, to help people own property and hold on to it and not lose it and build wealth for their families, but also to be able to access affordable rental housing, because that's also an important right, just the right to live somewhere where you can afford the rent, and you're not, the rent's not going to be jacked up, $500 on little notice. So we try to work in researching these issues, on policy, working with elected officials like yourself to figure out what are some laws that could really help people, low, moderate income, middle income people in communities like Brockton to stabilize their housing situation, whether they're owners or renters or they want to become owners. We also want to train law students to work in this field. We we actually created a new they call it a concentration at the law school that goes on your degree on real estate and community development law, because what we're talking about here is really community development, what's going to help strengthen Brockton, strengthen families so they can have stable rental situations or home ownership and be part of all the good things that are happening in Brockton. And we also do something called community legal education, because we want people to know their rights, whether you're a tenant or a homeowner or want to buy a home. And we'll have another podcast someday talking about the importance of having a will. But we're starting a program with some legal aid organizations to have classes in the community about why you need a will if you own a home, and what's involved in creating one. And so that people can be in control of their life, they can leave a legacy for their families, and they can plan also for things that happen during their life. Like you might want to have a health proxy in case something bad happens medically, for example. So we'll have another podcast talking about that. But we really want to help uh, property owners, homeowners in Brockton and other neighborhoods, communities like Brockton, to be able to pass their home on to the next generation in a safe way, because there are lots of ways that it gets passed on and bad things happen. But that's the community legal education part. But part of that is also having podcasts with you like this, just to talk about important information the community should know.
It is very important to really educate the community, and only by what you said, it is so much. Always, we've known in history that owning a home for communities like in Brockton
Yes.
is your way to own that American dream, is your way to pass on that wealth to the next generation, is very important for families and communities. And more we've seen the multi-generational homes where we have the
Mm-hmm.
grandmother, the
Mm-hmm.
mother, the kids, the
Mm-hmm.
grandkids, they're all living in the same property, in the same house, because people just can't afford anymore to really own their own space, and whether they're renting or if they actually own it, it's like the entire family pretty much living together, so they're overpopulated. And that really showcased in Brockton, especially during COVID, when we were supposed to quarantine, we were supposed to
Mm-hmm.
keep our distance, we were supposed to make sure we were protecting one another. Brockton was one of the places that was mostly affected in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts because of the fact that we have these multi-generation homes, and that
Right.
is just one example of that, even in healthcare, and how
Mm-hmm.
people just living in these crowded spaces and the cars all parked in the streets, and people not having access to really having that space for their families because they're all just living together.
Yeah.
And the rental prices, We
Right.
could talk about that alone because that is a lot. When we have the landlords just increasing the rental prices, and then you go to housing court, it's mainly the landlords that are represented. So if you are able to create a project with new lawyers, they're getting they're passing the bar
Right.
and they're becoming
Right.
attorneys. They'll
E-
be able to represent also
Exactly.
the tenants.
Yeah.
That
Like,
voice.
and you're a great example. Like you come from the community, you became a lawyer, you're looking out for people in the community, and but not everybody who goes into law does that. And part of it because they don't know how. They may think the only thing they can do is make money to pay off their student loans, but you can do, even if it's just pro bono, you can do a lot. But you could also have a regular practice that really helps people in Brockton.
You need to be creative, like I do. I practice immigration law, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a special immigrant juvenile cases, which is the unaccompanied minors. They obviously don't have the money to pay you up front. But what we do, we really work with them to help them get their work permit, help them get their social security, help them just get somewhat stable on their feet, and they'll do million payment plans, and we'll do a reduced price. So you work with your community, you work with the people that you really wanted to help, and by doing that you get the cases that people can afford to pay you, and
Right.
that allows you to help
Right.
even more people in the community. But you need to get creative.
Right.
It does put a pressure on you when you just come out of law school and you have to pay your student loans, and you have to maybe work for someone from some firm that you have to put billable hours. So there's a lot of pressure too.
There is.
But when people is available and they're available to really help the community, we need that. We so much need
Yes.
that. So what you do is amazing. So you're the perfect person that talk about housing today, and
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna be just really not even getting to the nitty gritty of it, but at least about the issues and what is happening in the Commonwealth of
Yeah.
Massachusetts. The fact that we're seeing so many people moving out of the city of Brockton, moving out of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, just going to our neighboring states, Rhode Island, or just moving so much further out, maybe
Yeah.
to New Bedford and Taunton, and just keep on moving out of the city here in Brockton because people just being priced out.
Right. Yeah. I think, Brockton has a reputation as being relatively affordable. So I think outside of Brockton, people don't realize that price costs are going up, but for homes and for rents. And and I'm curious what you see in terms of rental housing. I looked up what HUD considers the fair market rent in Brockton. So like for a 3 bedroom, it's about $2,500. No, actually, it's almost about $2,500. And that's a lot for a middle income, moderate income family. But do you see rents at that level or even higher?
Yes. And when you say that people outside of Brockton think that Brockton is affordable, if you own a property maybe, or you rent in the Boston area, then you're moving into Brockton. Then compared to that, oh yeah, Brockton is more affordable. But then it keeps our prices much higher because the
Yeah.
bidding process. If you're selling a house in the Boston area that costs so much more money, and you made some profit, and that now you're buying in Brockton, then you're going to be putting bids even above the appraisal price, and people are paying out of pocket
Yeah.
because they just need to find a place to live. We don't have enough homes and properties on the market,
Right.
and now it's creating this
Yeah.
whole bubble
That's a
that.
good example of how the housing crisis affects everybody in Massachusetts. Even we have a problem in Brockton, but part of it is people, like you were saying, from the Boston area realizing that, that it's more affordable here. So they're bidding up
More
prices.
land space.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
you
yeah,
got
yeah,
backyard, green
yeah,
space. It's a great city, great communities, and you can just hop on a commuter rail.
yeah,
You go to work, and you make more money if you're working in a lot of people in Brockton cannot afford to really work in Brockton, so
yeah,
they have
yeah,
to commute and work in Boston.
yeah,
So for them to come back and be able to afford the prices, and as to the rental prices, you just see it keeps on increasing. So it's very unaffordable for people to be able to find a
yeah,
$1,500 apartment for them to rent.
yeah.
That's almost maybe a one bedroom you'll
Mm-hmm.
be able to get for that if you're lucky. But even a one bedroom, two bedrooms, they're definitely around the 2,000 dollars at least, and it's very expensive because if it's a single mother, a single parent, and they got a child, they need at least two bedrooms. And if you're paying $2,000 for a two-bedroom, it's not affordable for people.
That,
People are struggling.
that's
People
right.
are struggling.
That's right. And and struggling means, well, this gets to what's an affordable rent. Um, and we know people are struggling. And one way we measure it is if you're paying more than a third of your income for rent, then your cost burden is what they say, which means you're having to choose sometimes between groceries, the rent, electricity, childcare, uh, clothes for your kids, that people shouldn't have to choose between those things. So,
And we're talking about people that work 40 hours per
yes,
week
yes,
in the workforce,
right,
and they've educated people, they've got a degree. It's people that if they work 40 hours per week and they're looking to afford a two-bedroom for their family, it's becoming
right,
very unaffordable. It puts on that pressure, and then you have car issues, and if your car breaks down,
right.
then that's something you not budgeted for. Maybe you didn't saved
That's
for,
right.
and now we're having this population. They're not saving up for retirement. They're not
Yes,
protected. It
that's
it
right.
just keeps on piling up,
Right,
and
right,
all that people need is a safe space for them to be able to sleep at night because they're working all day,
right.
and for their kids to be able to have a safe neighborhood, and it keeps on piling up. So this is an issue.
Yeah,
We know the governor sees it as an issue, and she's been very proactive from the very beginning, saying we need more housing, we need housing production, we need to make sure we build up more housing, we need to have more affordable housing, and we just passed at the House, but it has to go through the Senate to the housing bond bill, and that really looks to address because we in Massachusetts we have public housing, but we know the issues with the public housing too, which a lot of them needs work to be done, and we can't rent it, we can't help people because they are just vacant, and we had reporting on that, we had criticism around that, and when you're a new administration, you're just picking up from the previous administration.
yeah,
Now you have to do an assessment, now you have to do evaluation and see what will be the quicker to get fixed up and put it out there for people, because we know we have a huge wait list and it keeps on adding up. So
that's right. That's right.
there's money that we're putting in a housing bond bill to address fixing up for that, and we have that same issue here in the city of Brockton, which the Brockton Housing Authority is waiting for that money to come in. Because I do go to my high rises, I do go to my senior centers, I go to visit them, and you do see they all complain that their place does need to
Yes,
be renovated, does need to be kept up. It's the conditions are not great.
right,
They're doing the best that they can with the money that they have, with the abilities that they have. It's amazing work, but it's just really that funding that we need to put
right.
towards
And,
this.
and you and I were talking about this. There's about 400 units on Montello of public housing, and the cities. But one thing it's important to understand for our audience is that it takes a long time to plan to get the money together to fix up property or to build new property, that you have to have all kinds of studies, architects, funding applications, and then you have to wait in line. So the city's done their job. They've gotten in line for the money to fix up these 400 units, but they're in line. But the great thing about the bond bill, the Affordable Homes Act, there's a much more money for public housing. So fingers crossed, Brockton will get some of that new money so that these 400 apartments can be fixed up. And as you said, some of them are vacant. So people should know, like your city and your elected officials and the community, they aren't just sitting on their hands. They've been working hard, and thankfully, at least the House has passed the bill that's going to get more money, and let's hope the Senate passes it so that those housing units get fixed up in Brockton.
Yes,
Okay.
and also we have the huge, I think it's pretty much every community in Massachusetts regarding the homelessness
Yeah.
population, that we've seen an increase with that. And it's not just Brockton. I know a lot of times we are driving around and walking around our
Mm-hmm.
communities where this, the Brockton Community Access, this cable TV where we're recording now, it's very close to the shelter, and we are moving the shelter out of Main Street to the west side of the city of Brockton, and that will allow for wraparound services
Right.
because the community, the homeless population needs, in order to be housed, wraparound services. They need the mental health. They need to really have that all around because otherwise they are not going to be able. It's not just finding them a place and
Right.
putting them on an apartment. Great job, you're on your own. Now you've got your own place. You don't need to sleep on the streets anymore. They really need to have the services.
Right.
And a lot of that is also veterans
Yep.
that so this money and the housing bond bill for veterans and for the homeless shelters to be able to have the wraparound services because when they only go to the shelter at 5 o'clock,
Right.
whatever, and then at 7 o'clock in the morning they're kicked out, and then they have to wander around in the streets.
Exactly.
That really puts on a pressure on a community because we want to be able to do more, and we see that it's a population that needs more,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not doing enough. If we are just providing them a place to sleep at night, and then in the morning we're like, oh great, now you're on your own, and we're not providing them that assistance. Maybe even helping them get a job, maybe even helping them with the workforce and training and new professions for them to just be able
Right.
to get a
Yeah. That's
job and to feel that sense of belonging in their community.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say you have to have the wraparound service, as you said, for to stabilize folks who've been homeless so they can deal with all the issues in their life and have a place to be during the day and supports. And I would say for folks who live across Brockton, if you hear about a housing project, a development that's going to have some housing for homeless folks, some people say, "Oh, I'm against that because I don't want more homeless people coming to Brockton." But that's the solution. That's not causing the problem. People should understand that the housing with wraparound services, that's what we need to build and fund and do more of to get people off the street. So if you hear about housing with wraparound services for the homeless, that's that's the solution. That's not going to cause the problem. But a lot of people have it the other way around, and they sometimes they when they get the facts when they go to community meetings, they can change their mind. But I just want people to keep that in mind that that's something we should be welcoming, the wraparound services that comes with housing.
I think it's a lot of times the scare tactics because people are
Yeah,
busy. They're working and they're worried about their family. So when
yeah,
they're hearing these rumors, they don't really have the time to just go and read and to show up at the community, the
yeah.
hearings and the meetings, and to really educate themselves a little bit more. So that's why it's
Mm-hmm.
important to for us
Mm-hmm.
to be doing our jobs as elected officials, as educators, to really make sure that we provide that knowledge and that information to the community, whether it's through a podcast, whether it's the local cable access, whether it's social media, whichever means that people are mostly on, that they are on their cars and listening to a podcast. I think it's our job to make sure that we're educating because there's a lot out there to really scare people, and then they're not getting all the facts, and that
Yeah.
becomes concerning. But Father Bills, they're doing tremendous work. On during COVID, we needed more space in order to make sure that the
Mm-hmm.
homeless population could quarantine. So they acquired the Rodeo Inn,
Mm-hmm.
and that at first was just the hotels with the rooms, and people were staying there. And then after, since they were already using up that hotel space, then they became even more creative. They're like, what if we just put on a kitchenette and make it these studios for people to be able to be living in these hotel rooms? So then they did that. So
Mm-hmm.
now very close by, it's going to be their new homeless population, the shelter there, but with the wraparound services. And Brockton Neighborhood Health Center is going to be
Right.
stationed there, so they're going to have a lot of services for people just to come in. And they also have something amazing. If you're thinking that you're about to become homeless, before you become homeless, they'll have an intake process which people can come in let them know, okay, so this is what I need. If I don't pay my rent this month, I'm going to be sleeping in my car. I'm going to be on the streets. So they'll even provide them money and funding to be able to pay the rent for them to get caught up. There's going to be some different ways. So they're saying, come to us before you become homeless, before, because if they are able to get to people before and find out what the needs are, then they'll have the resource to help them. So this is exactly what we need. And by talking to them with father bills, what they're saying that the age group that are increasing in becoming more and more homeless is from 18 to 22.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're saying is usually these kids, they grew up in the system all their lives, and when
Mm.
they turn 18, they age out of the system and they are done. They are done in just complying with the rules. They're done in being in confined, and they just like, I'm rather live on the streets, become, on my own, on my feet. But they're saying we're seeing a huge increase in that population lately, and that's something for us to really a wake up call.
Right.
What can we do to provide resources
We're
for
talking
them?
about young adults aging out of foster care, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know that there's a program, I don't know if they're still around, that the state had for that group from like 18 to 24. And there used to be a rental voucher for, for, well, they're not kids anymore once you turn 18, who have aged out of foster care. If they're enrolled in a job training either have a job or they're enrolled in a job training program, they can get a voucher to pay the rent. So it gets them off the street and they're working towards getting a job or keeping a job. And that could be a great program. Maybe that's something we could work on to see if is that still exist, and if not, can we get some money to restart it or expand it? Because you're right, I think that's why a lot of these young adults are on the street, and some of them we don't know about because they're couch surfing with friends, whatever, and
Yeah.
then we may not see them on the street, but we know there's a big population of young adults who are homeless, either on the street or just moving from place to place, couch to couch.
Yes, so that is also a population that just by talking to some of these organizations, it brings it to our attention. And like you said, maybe we should look further into some of these programs and see how can we get to these young adults before they are unhoused and they're on their own. So I have a child that also just turned 18,
Mm-hmm.
and to me that's still a child, but legally it's not. It's a young adult.
Yeah,
So that 18 is a very tough age because you're still trying to find themselves. So I as a mother have pretty much no say in the sense that now he can go to his physical without my presence.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
need to be present. So it changes. Now he can sign his own forms for his medicals
yeah,
and
yeah,
and all of that really is like, oh wow, this is real now. So now
yeah.
it's he's already an adult, and so that population really needs to have that support, and there's a great potential. We need the workforce too. We've been saying we need people in the trades,
That's
plumbing,
right.
electrician. How much we try calling when we need a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter, and we really can't find someone because they're so busy. And the ones we find, they're older, they're going to be retiring soon. So we need more young adults in the trades, makes good money. They pay you while you are training, and it starts with a decent pay, the union, you get the health care and you get protections. So if we're able to get the unions and
Mm-hmm.
to work with these young adults and provide them their safe space where they can be able to learn a trade and support themselves. I think this is what we're all about, just providing resources for people, connecting people, and giving them that sense of belonging that they can do it. No matter how life tough was, that now they can actually do something
Right,
for
right.
themselves. And
To help do that, we need good job training programs. There are a couple that I know about. Job Corps is one, if people don't know about it, is a great job training program for young adults. In some cities, they have a program called Youth Build, which trains young adults in construction trades. And I know there's a Youth Build in Boston, and I think up in the North Shore, but it'd be great if we could get them to start a Youth Build training program in Brockton. And I know there are some contractors, some of the larger contractors have training programs because they see they need a trained workforce. They see that their workforce is getting older. They want to get young adults, especially from the communities where the construction is happening. I know there's a great contractor called NEI that has a job training program in Boston, and if they or other contractors are doing work in Brockton, we should talk to them and trying to get them to do some training, even to get what's called like your OSHA 10, like the basic training you need to step on a construction site is that OSHA 10 certification. It's called that because it takes 10 hours of training on work construction site safety. I think we need more of those programs right here in Brockton to engage those young adults you're talking about.
The vocational schools does a great, phenomenal
Mhm.
job with that, but there's a wait list to get into a
Right,
vocational
right,
school. That becomes a whole another issue that we
yeah,
could talk about for
yeah,
another hour because more and more kids maybe want to get into the trades and not necessarily go to a 4 year college and spend the money to that. They just want to be able to graduate and be able to make some income for themselves and their families because a lot of them do need to work. They've been working through high school because they need to help out in the house and the family and help their parents because living is just so very expensive. So that's
yeah.
something that we need to would be great because even if they're not in a vocational school, they'll be able to still have access to these programs that we go and recruit these kids and train them and put them to work with decent pay and benefits and retirement and pension. So that is definitely something great. I know it's hard to believe, but our show is almost coming to an end. So I
Okay.
will give you the moments so that you can say more things that you're working on, what you're hoping to see in the future, what you think that we're doing so far as a Commonwealth. Because we really have to remember it's not a state, it's a Commonwealth. We're here for that well being of all of us. So, how
That's
can we
right.
do better? What we're doing that you're thinking is great, but
Hmm.
areas that we also need to improve. And we're heading in the right direction, but
Yeah. I'd say there are a couple things that are happening in Brockton that are really positive, and maybe in another occasion we could talk more about them. One is the city is helping develop to build more mixed income housing. There used to be buildings that were either all affordable, like all low income or all market rate. But there's some great examples of mixed income projects in Brockton. Like the building, it's called Sycamore on Main, but people know it because the Brockton Brew Company
yeah,
has,
Brockton beer.
yeah, Brockton beer is there. That's mixed income. It's got some market rates, middle income, low income. We need more of that. And there's some other
And the
developers who are doing
first
that.
floor is a retail,
Yes,
and they have a great relationship with the tenants. So they'll have events, they'll hold events. The tenants, so it's really a great neighborhood, and I'm there all the
yes,
time. They
yep.
do a phenomenal job.
They are,
Yes.
and I believe that NeighborWorks Housing Solutions was the developer. That's a model that they've done. But there's some market rate developers that have also done mixed income housing and fixed up some of the older industrial buildings that you see along Montello and other streets. Um, and so we need more mixed income housing, and we also need more opportunities for home buyers. And that on maybe on another podcast we can talk more about that. But let's take note now that the city has a great program for first-time home buyers. They do it in partnership with NeighborWorks Housing Solutions.
And they have the down payment
Yeah,
assistance
yeah. It can
program.
be up to $15,000 in down payment assistance, which is really sometimes that's the biggest obstacle for buying a home. Like if no one in your family's ever owned a home before, means they probably haven't accumulated the assets to give you money for the down payment. People call that the bank of mom and dad, but that's people in the suburbs who are allowed. Back in the day, remember, the suburbs were kept all white by exclusionary zoning and by racial covenants. This is after World War II, so all the veterans who came back who were white could move to the suburbs and buy homes. But if you were black or Latino, you were kept in the city where you couldn't get a loan to buy a home. So a lot of the folks who want to buy a home for the first time in their family, they don't have the bank of mom and dad. So they need this program with NeighborWorks and with the city for that down payment assistance. And they have classes so you can learn to get a safe mortgage. So you're not taken advantage of by some of these lenders who will, it sounds like they're making a good deal for you, but it's really a trap that could lead to foreclosure down the
I think
road.
we all remember the 2008 crisis.
Exactly. So take a first-time homebuyer class. Go through the city, through the Brockman redevelopment, or NeighborWorks Housing Solutions. Make sure you take a homebuyer class. But there's a lot more to say about home ownership in Brockton and mixed income housing. I'm hoping we can do that again.
Yes, absolutely. This was great. Thank you so much for listening to our show, and we'll definitely be back, and we'll definitely have our guests back so we can talk more about so many issues that I feel we raised up, and that we can definitely go deeper and provide resources to the community on where they can go to get this information. So we'll definitely be back.
Okay.
And thank you so much for being part of our show today.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.